This is AirGunsNirvana with a look at how I maintain my Benjamin high pressure hand pump. In an attempt to make this video as brief as possible, I've already gone through and loosened all the different components that I'll be removing from the hand pump in advance. But to start off with, usually I grab the outer part of the pump assembly here, strike the handle, and that'll loosen the handle assembly there. I next turn my attention to the pressure bleed-off screw. That takes a 13mm wrench to loosen it. The air intake filter assembly takes a 12mm. I then turn my attention to the assembly that goes from the pump to the base. Crescent wrench, appropriately sized. Loosen that up. Set the base over to the side. Next, I come back to the handle. Loosen the handle assembly. I use a small crescent wrench, a small Allen wrench to drift out the pin that holds the handle onto the pump tube. There's a small O-ring. The tube, outer tube, unthreads the nut there. Set the tube to the side. Next, with a large crescent wrench, appropriately sized to hold back up here at the base, I take a smaller crescent wrench and, not making it large enough to go around this brass assembly, but to where the head of it catches there and puts just enough pressure to allow the assembly to break loose. Once that's disconnected, these two components are taken off. That tube is set over to the side. The high pressure pump rod is removed. This assembly here is removed. There are two plastic washers and an O-ring that are in there. One of the plastic washers stayed here. So all that has been disassembled. There's a check valve here in the bottom, 13mm. Gets the check valve assembly apart. That goes in there. And now the process of wiping everything down, getting everything nice and clean comes in. I have a air chuck, a male fitting that goes into the assembly there. Take an old t-shirt, cover up using shop air, supply a couple of bursts of air through the assembly there just in case there's any contamination in there. It'll blow that out. I then turn my attention to the air intake filter. It threads loosely into this chuck assembly. Hold on to it, give it a couple of bursts of shop air, clean that out. So with the t-shirt, I'm not going to clean all the components, but just to give you a rundown, wipe all the exteriors of all the different pipe components down with the t-shirt material. Just like when I clean my air gun barrels, I take a drawstring, place it through the interior of the tube. I have an appropriate sized piece of fabric. It's more of the t-shirt material. Put through the draw through. and that cleans the interior of this tube. I clean the interior of this tube and use a small piece of t-shirt material to clean the interior of that tube. So once all those components are nice and clean, I then turn my attention to the end of the high pressure pump rod here. There's the white piece is called the split ring that goes towards the very bottom. Then the O-ring, that split ring holds the O-ring in its position. 95% of high pressure air pump failures are due to the fact that this black O-ring has become damaged. So you'll want to take a magnifying glass and look at all of the different O-rings and replace those as needed. So we're going to assume that everything has been cleaned and it's ready to be reassembled. I had learned here recently that the company that sells the rebuild kits to rebuild this, they recommend using full synthetic Mobil 1 motor oil. Apparently the viscosity doesn't really matter. As long as it's full synthetic, they're happy with that. So this is just getting a small container, dipping your finger and your thumb into the container, getting the gloves nice and oily, and then using that to lubricate the O-rings and the rods, as well as the exterior of all of these different components here. So we're just going to assume that I've already done that, and we're going to start the reassembly process. So we have the high pressure rod that goes into there. We take the appropriate O-ring, put that over pump rod, one plastic washer, second plastic washer, this assembly here. I'm not going to bother to fully tighten everything down. I'm trying to keep this video as brief as possible with hopefully as much information as is needed. Those pieces, that piece slides over that, and now thread two components together. Those are good. Next is the install of the check valve. The check valve and spring are installed in this fashion. The check valve drops in pointy side first. Small part of the spring goes against the check valve. That assembly threads back onto there. Generally speaking, when things are being reassembled, hand tight is all that's really necessary. O-rings are what seals all the different components together. There's not really a mechanical seal due to putting it back together really, really tight. Next is the O-ring on pump rod, pump handle, drift pin, pump assembly threaded back onto the base if necessary. There at the end, using a Cresent wrench to just snug that up. Air filter goes back where it goes, and the bleed off goes back where that goes. I hope the information that was conveyed is helpful. Please feel free to post questions and comments. I'll do my best to answer any question I can. Thank you and have a great day.